Nasir, this is for our program Showcase the Best of Indian Cinema. Now, for this, we have to go a little right back to your earlier days and things. So, I would like to start from your early days. At the time when you got the acting bug. That how and why did you get that acting bug?
And when?
And when?
Very early in life. I wasn't much good at anything else. I felt I was a good actor, but I was not a good student and all that. So I never got parts in the school plays or anything of the kind. And in fact, while I was in this particular school in a place called Nainital, I never got a chance to ever appear on stage. I had two brothers, both older than me, who were both, one was a brilliant scholar, the other was a great athlete and sportsman. So they were the ones. They both won Best Actor awards, in fact, in school. Then I changed schools. Rather, I got hauled out of this school and put into another one. And it was in this other school in Ajmer that I just myself took the initiative and got a few friends together and did a play. We did scenes from The Merchant of Venice, in which I played Shylock. And I directed it for whatever it was worth. And it was liked. And I got a leading part in the school play after that. And it was the most wonderful kind of acceptance I'd ever experienced in my life. It felt absolutely wonderful, and in fact, the very time that I went on stage, I felt as if I have come home and this is where I should have been all along. I have never ever had a moment of nervousness, and I'm not boasting, but this is a strange fact when I go on stage or when I prepare to perform. I never feel any anxiety about how I'll perform. I just feel like I just want to get on there and do it. And it has always been to me the most comforting, the most fruitful activity that I could have indulged in or involved myself in. And amazingly, in this other school where I started acting and did plays on my own and became one of the good actors of the school, I improved in everything else. This is a very interesting thing that happened. I made it to the school cricket team and I started coming in the top of the class and I became good in my lessons and everything. So acting is for me not just a means of having fun, but also, which it is, but it's also a way of coming to terms with life and understanding about people.
Really surprise everybody else.
Yeah, I think so. Occupation. And so I auditioned and I got in. And I'm afraid I was only 21 and I think you can condone it. But I find it hard, because I did waste a lot of time when I was there. I did not really develop myself and still haven't, I feel. But anyway, the point is that I acted a great deal in the 3 years at the school, got introduced to a number of great playwrights and great literature which I had not otherwise been familiar with, and managed to do a lot physically. Dance classes and singing classes and yoga and exercise and martial arts and this and that, which I was able to assimilate later into a coherent system for myself. And this happened at the Film Institute, because in the Film Institute, I went to the Film Institute, I must confess, not because I thought I'd learn anything, but I thought I'd get a job in movies. This was the time, 73, when every Film Institute actor was getting work. And there was a legion of them who had all become stars, some of whom are still around, some have been forgotten, but practically every actor from the Film Institute got work in movies, profitable work. So I thought, well, I'll get a role of a policeman or a lawyer or something, one of these supporting parts. That is the most I foresaw, but I knew that with time I would be able to prove myself. And that's why I joined the Film Institute. But the Film Institute was a real eye-opener. not only because of the amount of movies that we saw and the kind of cinema that one was introduced to. Cinema from countries I didn't know made films, you know, like Poland or Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, and so on. French films, Italian films, Japanese films, of course. Before this, one had seen nothing but Hollywood films or British films or, of course, the Bombay films. And it was completely mind-blowing. And I realized that there is a whole new technique to this business of acting in cinema. And we are far behind, both in terms of our movies and our acting. And the acting classes which were held there, under the tutelage of Professor Taneja, were a great help. They were classes which were geared to preventing you from acting and to teach you how to behave in a situation without trying to show how you're feeling. To put it in a nutshell, this is what it was. And I found this very beneficial. And I ended up learning a great deal. And I'm equally grateful to both places, I must admit.
Your days at FTII had exposed you to some intelligent cinema. But as far as Hindi cinema was concerned, was there anything or anybody in the industry who inspired you, to kind of?
I must confess that I have never been completely taken in by Hindi movies, except the movies of Guru Dutt. Consistently, he's the only filmmaker I can name, and Vijay Anand after him. People like Bimal Roy and K. Asif also made great movies, and there were others, certainly Mehboob Khan. I mean, I don't mean any insult to the people I haven't named, Raj Kapoor, but they were not people who were consistently brilliant in their content or their presentation, I felt. Guru Dutt's movies, certainly, I consider him to be the greatest filmmaker we've had. And then there were examples of movies like Mughal-e-Azam and Bandini and Sujata, you know, and Mother India and Andaz. There were many such films, Jagte Raho, which were very inspiring to watch, but at the same time one felt very hopeless because you never believed that these films will be made here today. And time has proved that to be true, because I really feel that the Hindi movie industry has moved backwards ever since the introduction of color. Till there was black and white, there was an attempt to create interesting frames, to tell a story interestingly, because you didn't have all these purples and yellows and greens to fall back on the moment the audience got bored. And this is all that the Hindi movie makers have made of color, is to use it as a hallucinatory sort of a device, you know, that, you know, here, okay, splashes of color, and sometimes it works. But the fact is that the creative input into Hindi movies, whether you're speaking of the lyrics or the dialogue or the scripts themselves, have just, or the acting or the, you know, anything, you're hard put to name 2 or 3 excellent actors of the last 20 years, but you can easily name a dozen excellent actors of the 20 years before that. You know, I'm talking of 40s to 60s, and then I'm talking of 60s to 80s. You know, it's I'm hard put to recall a single film song of the recent past that I really like, and, you know, which I'd like to listen to.
Not even your way.
No, definitely not that. So that is how it was. I was always inspired by the American actors who were unusual. The actors like Spencer Tracy and Paul Muni, Rod Steiger, Anthony Quinn. These were the actors I idolized and tried to identify with, and felt that if I do well, this is how I may end up. I had no illusions about becoming a leading man in Hindi films. I still cannot get over the astonishment, you know, that I have actually done that kind of stuff. I haven't done it well, but I have at least been given the opportunity to do it. I never dreamt that I would.
Nathan, would you say this attitude of yours drifted you or took you to what once was called parallel cinema films by Shyam Benegal and these?
I had no choice at that time. I did not make a conscious decision to go into parallel cinema. I got my first offer while I was still studying in the Film Institute. This was Shyam's film Nishant. And I mean, it was very fortunate that I got it. And after that, he cast me again in Manthan, and then he cast me again in Bhumika. Girish cast me in Godhuli. So my first 4 or 5 films were art movies, and not through any doing of mine. They were just the only things that I got. And I happily and gratefully accepted them. And those are the films really on which my reputation is based. I'm well aware of that. So it was just very fortunate for me that I was in the right place at the right time. There were a lot of films being made which needed real-looking people, not heroic actors, and I happened to be around. So, and I was lucky that Shyam and Girish liked me, and so I got cast. It was just an accident of fate. It wasn't a conscious decision on my part.
Let's say when Shyam gave you your first film, how was it? I mean, did you by that time go through a period of struggle, your anxiety, your nervousness? Or was it a very cool phase?
No, I was extremely anxious because I never expected to start my career with a leading part in a prestigious filmmaker's film, opposite someone who was already a star. I really never expected. I thought I would have to claw my way up. I thought I'd have to do the small parts first and prove myself and go on, and the suffering I knew would be immense. But I was well prepared for that, and this suddenly landed in my lap. So it was something. I could not believe this had happened when Shyam had told me this, and I went back to the Film Institute. I went back flying. I walked on air all the way back to Pune. So there was this tremendous anxiety that I have to make good of this opportunity. I cannot blow it. And here is a chance for me to try out all the stuff that I think I know about acting. How to create a realistic character and make him come to life and make the audience believe that you are him. And it was really very fortunate that I got this part and not a part in a commercial Hindi film in which I would have had to sing songs and so on, because I would have messed it up. But this was just the right thing that could have come my way.
Do you remember the first scene that you did and how you got yourself prepared for that?
Yeah, sure, I remember. It was a scene with Amrish Puri, who I had long admired and never met. I had only seen him on stage, and I was terribly impressed with him. And also by his whole approach and his attitude, and he was a very serious person, devoted to theatre and so on. And I was a beginner, and we had this scene where Amrish has this habit of scattering advice. He's very sweet, but that does bug some people, I know. But the fact that it was Amrish made me both nervous and comfortable, because I really liked him, and he gave me the feeling that he liked me, though I knew he was judging me and trying to figure out, who's this character who suddenly got such an important part in this movie. And there's a scene of him having a bath, and he's sitting there all muscles and soap on him and so on. And I'm playing this puny little brother of his who's a fool and a coward and so on. And so it was not very difficult for me to identify with this character, because there was Amrish, and there was Girish Karnad, and there was Shyam Benegal, and all these great cats. And so it was not difficult at all for me to imagine I'm just a pathetic little rat, in the company of these great people. So I just believed in it, and Amrish, fortunately for me, reminded me of an uncle of mine, who was one of my great heroes in life. He was a policeman, was big and strong and everything. And so I just sort of put him, started imagining that, and it was, and the situation was so real, of this elder brother sitting in the middle of the courtyard and having a bath, and this little brother slinking past and he calls him, come here, and says something to him in this deep rumble of a voice, and I sort of slink away. So it was quite good, and I remember Amrish hugged me very warmly after the scene was done, and said to me that you surprised me after my first shot.
That was good enough for you.
Well, yeah, I think that's what turned my head.
Then we will talk about your career, the phases of your career, or maybe let's talk about the films in the next film with Shyam, and incidents from that film while shooting, something interesting.
Manthan. See, my performance in Nishant had worked. I still consider it one of my best performances, like Kulbhushan and Amrish and Girish and so on. And let me jump a little. It was after Manthan was released that my performance in Nishant was appreciated, because people realized I was the same guy and it was a completely different sort of part. Well, anyway, because of my own assessment of my Nishant performance, I felt that this method works. You don't have to act. You have got to do something much harder than that. You have got to believe that you are this person, and you've got to become this person. It's as simple as that. And no matter what people may say about it, and the people who scoff at the method are people who don't know anything about it. And that's why they scoff at it. Basically, the method is a technique which teaches you to do your best, to work your hardest. And believe me, it requires much more preparation to improvise in a shot than it takes to learn the lines and speak them. It requires much more preparation. It's foolishness to think that you can just go in front of the camera and improvise. You cannot. And people cite the examples of Marlon Brando, who can never learn his lines. The fact is that Brando's concentration is unequaled. Brando concentrates so hard when he's doing a scene that he can say the right things without being told what words to use. It is the most incredible achievement that an actor can hope for. He is not speaking prepared lines, and that is why whenever you see him, when he's at his best, he really takes you in, because you believe he is this person saying these things for the first time. And well, anyway, in my own clumsy little way, I attempted to apply this. I tried to become a villager and live like that, and I slept in that hut for a few days, and I lived in those clothes, and stories are legion about how I didn't change my clothes and didn't have a bath and all that. Well, that's all part of the the rubbish that gets added on. But I did try as hard as I could to believe I was a villager. I gave it all the energy I had, and that performance too was very much liked. An interesting thing about it was one crucial scene which I just couldn't get right, because I was just trying too hard. There's a scene where I have to shout at Amrish Puri, and I think we took about 17 or 18 takes, and I just couldn't get it right. I was just out of control and cracking up, and I had to tell Shyam that I can't do it. Please, let's try this tomorrow. That has never again happened to me in my career, but it happened that day, and it was because I was trying too hard. And the next morning, I got it right in one go. But that is something I was guilty of early in my career, trying too hard. But then if I hadn't tried too hard, I wouldn't have had the impact, whatever impact that I had. And so I think, and the performances were not perfect, obviously. So had I not tried that hard, I may not have achieved that level of competence or intensity.
Then going on to his next few films, Bhumika, Mandi, Trikal, and Junoon, which one do you think we should talk about next?
Frankly, I didn't like Bhumika much. Trikal, I had a very small part in. And Junoon, I feel could have been a better film. I think Junoon had too small a budget, despite the fact that it was pretty generous budget from Shyam's standards that time. But it still should have had a better budget, and I believe the casting should have been different. But we'll let that pass.
As far as, or as long as your own role was concerned, it was something which was...
Well, I wasn't too happy with it. I know I looked very good and all, But it was just a repeat of my Manthan performance in a different costume. I had a sword instead of a lathi. And that is why I wasn't very happy. I wished that I had been given something different to do. But then it did bring me a lot of attention, and I got branded as the angry young man. And so I got deluged with offers from commercial movies to play the angry union leader or the angry...
How was it working with Shyam in all these number of films?
Wonderful, really wonderful. He is a great help. He loves actors, and he really helps you in a very gentle and unnoticed sort of way. You sense his presence always around, and you feel very safe. And I think that's the best that a director can do. It's not the director's job to teach you how to act. He has chosen you because he trusts your abilities. And Shyam never tries to teach the actors how to act. He just guides them with a great deal of love. And the most a director can do is make an actor feel comfortable. Not make him feel that he's on test. Make him feel that what he's doing is all right. And if he goes wrong, to gently put him on the right track. Shyam does that, and it's a rare quality.
Should I say that as a newcomer or as a person who's done the first few films with Shyam, something of his this thing rubbed off on you as an actor? What kind of stuff do you think you have learned from him?
Well, first of all, he gave me one very important lesson in the difference between film and theatre, if there is a difference. What he said to me was that you need not be anxious about the fact that you've not acted in a film before, because you're a good stage actor, and on stage what you need to do is to make contact with each person sitting in the audience. In film, what you need to do is to make contact with the camera, because ultimately it's the camera which is the eye of every man in the audience. And I see a lot in this statement, and I made it my job to make friends with the camera and make sure that the camera becomes friends with me. And I cannot define how you do this. Maybe I can. After doing Shyam's film, I went to the Film Institute to do a diploma film as a guest actor, and they were shooting in the room where I was living, in the guest room. So that night we packed up very late, and they left the camera in my room. So I told them, point it towards the bed and leave it there. And they did that. And this camera, not running of course, but this camera was pointed at me all the time, all night. And I think the next morning I woke up, I had no longer any fear of the camera.